I release the JP poll every Tuesday. It's my power ratings. It is not rankings. Big difference in the two, as we have to document every week. And lately, because we've partnered with FanDuel, people have been hurling some accusations at us. And the accusation is, oh, you're just releasing FanDuel's numbers. I mean, why are you calling this your poll? It's just FanDuel's numbers. And then afterwards, you come out when people fight you on it and you say, hey, here's the evidence I'm right. FanDuel backed me up. Well, it is true that there is heavy correlation, because if I am claiming to set up my power ratings in very much an odds-making, neutral field favorability sort of methodology, it stands to reason that a major sportsbook partner and their internal numbers would closely align with it if the model is worth its salt. Let me put it that way, which we think it is, because we've won money with it for a long time. And so, that is the case, that when I say things like so-and-so would be favored over so-and-so on a neutral field according to the model, I hit FanDuel up, and a lot of times they back me up on that. But not all the time. Not all the time. I just don't tell you when they don't back me up. Until tonight. Because the accusations have gone on, and the flames have been fanned for far too long. So tonight, I think we should take the opportunity on this very program to air out some dirty laundry from here within the Pate State family. We love FanDuel. FanDuel has been a great partner for us, but we don't agree with FanDuel across the board. At least the model doesn't. The model has a mind of its own. It spits out the JP poll every Tuesday night. Let me give you an example. First, I'll give you an example of where we agreed this week. I go to Eugene last weekend, right? And we all watched Ohio State lose to Oregon close. And then we come home, and Sunday we react to the game. And then Monday, I can't even remember what I did Monday. And then Tuesday we have the show. I put out the JP poll, and what did it say, Jesse and Colin? It said, Ohio State's still number 1 in the country. And Oregon's number 4? Like, what sense does this make? And a lot of folks had an issue with this, even though I explained what we do. I explain it every week. They couldn't square in their mind. Some people even claimed to understand the methodology, but still couldn't understand how you watch the result on the field, but then you say Ohio State's still over Oregon. And I had the hardest time not coming unglued. And I'm a very, very calm person. We're not even talking about opinion, guys. On this particular front, we're not even talking about opinion. Ohio State did lose to Oregon. And I am a person that absolutely values the results on the field. That's why if you made me fill out a ballot right now, I'd put Oregon above Ohio State. That's why if I were on the playoff committee and they made me seed the playoff today, I would put Oregon above Ohio State because they beat them, so they deserve it. But that's not what we're doing with the JP poll. We're listing teams in order of how they would be favored on a neutral field according to this computer. So I hit FanDuel up and I said, guys, I'm getting a lot of pushback on this. Give me what the hypothetical number would be if Oregon played Ohio State this week. If they played in Indianapolis or Arizona, I don't care. Just put it on a neutral field. Ohio State minus 2.5. So we were not talking about me saying, I think the color blue is best, and you say, nuh-uh, red's best. I was saying the sky is blue, and you were saying, it's not blue. It's not matter of opinion. That this happens to be a fact that still be favored. Now, you can care or not care about that. I don't ever put these numbers out as a means to suggest that even though Ohio State lost, they should still go in over so-and-so, or they should still be ranked ahead of so-and-so. All it is basically a resource. That's all it is. It's a little bit different than the AP. Now, having said that, FanDuel and I have not agreed on everything this week. For instance, the Ole Miss conundrum. I told you going into the Ole Miss LSU game, did I not? I said it on the show. The LSU board had a field day with it, but I said, I think LSU is going to, I think LSU narrowly beats Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is the better team. I am picking Ole Miss to lose, and if they lose close, I'll probably still have Ole Miss very high, because if the model expects something and that thing happens exactly as the model thought it would, the model sees no reason to change where it had that team. The result delivered was exactly what it thought should be delivered, especially given the dynamics of Ole Miss playing their 7th consecutive game, 2nd consecutive road game at that, and LSU being rested at home. So I didn't bump, nor did the model bump Ole Miss down in the JP poll. In fact, we kept Ole Miss at 7 Bama was at 8. What is that telling you? Well, that's telling you that this model right here, if it saw Ole Miss versus Alabama on a neutral field, I'll give you the number. It would make Ole Miss a 0.1 point favorite. So they were basically tied, but there was a tenth of a point that separated them. FanDuel disagrees. Pretty big. I hit up David and I said, hey, what would your traders make this number? They would make Bama a 3.5 point favorite against Ole Miss if they played on a neutral field today. That's not public. You can't find that anywhere. I've got the relationship with them. I am telling you, I confirm that with them. So we are way off. They have bumped Ole Miss down in their own internal ratings a lot more than I have. Either that or they kept Bama a lot higher than I have. Probably a combo of the two. But we are 3.5 points off. That is a massive gap, by the way. In the odds-making community, 3.5 points difference on a team or a combo of teams is a pretty big deal. So we disagree there. So that's one fight, the Ole Miss-Bama fight. There's another fight that FanDuel and the JP poll are waging as we speak, and that's an ACC special, an ACC Street Corner special, and it is Clemson and Miami because the JP poll has Clemson at 5 this week and Miami at 6. Right now, my model right here would favor Clemson by 0.3 points if they played Miami, let's say in Charlotte. FanDuel disagrees. They hit me, and they said if we had to hang that number today, we would make it Miami -2 against Clemson. So we are a couple of points off our opinion of how that game should line up. Now, here's what would happen. If the game was scheduled this week, this happens every week, by the way. If the game was scheduled this week and they put out Miami -2 against Clemson, all we'd do is we'd look at it, we'd run it through the model. The model would spit out that that's probably about a 58.5% play on Clemson, and we would decide whether we want to bet it or not. We'd wait to see if there was early action. We would hope that money came in on Miami to push it to 3, where we could get a solid field goal edge with Clemson. Probably wouldn't happen. But that's another disagreement. And I'll tell you a third disagreement, and this is the one that's been the most high profile. This is the one I would say by far we've taken the most flack for, Brigham Young, because I don't have him in the top 25. And that's because the profile of the team is that of a team that normally is not sustaining a top 25 performance. All I mean by that, as I explained a few minutes ago, is a team that is powered disproportionately by turnover luck normally tends to see that run out at some point in the year. There have been cases where you just don't see it run out, and that team rides that wave all year long. What we call that is an outlier. That is the exception to the rule. If you've built a pretty solid, dependable, predictive model, every year you will have exceptions to the rule. Washington last year was a big exception to the rule. There's a reason why that team beat Oregon in round 1 and then played Oregon again, and they were nearly a 10-point underdog. And what'd they do? They beat them again. And if they played a third time, Oregon would have still been favored. And they may have beaten them a third time, and Oregon would be favored the fourth game. That would have continued for quite a while. Washington was just the exception. They were the fly in the ointment. You do not change your entire methodology based on outliers. You just look at the cluster, and if most data points are falling well within reason, then you just look and you tip your cap to teams like Brigham Young. However, we're not putting them in the top 25. Right now we got them at 30. You guys notice Florida was in the top 25 this week. Florida we've got at 24. And predictably, there were a lot of people who looked and said, there is no planet, Earth or otherwise, where anyone would be able to favor Florida over Brigham Young right now. Are you kidding me? Undefeated versus 3-3. Let me tell you what the model would have. The model would have Florida as a 1.5 point favorite against Brigham Young on a neutral field. I hit up FanDuel, and it will bring you some comfort to know that FanDuel technically agrees with you guys, but it's virtually a pick'em. So if they saw that game happen on a neutral field, what I'm telling you is there's not a ton of disagreement between the actual sports book and what my numbers have. Brigham Young minus 0.5, which of course is a number that wouldn't exist. So they would either put out BYU -1 or they'd put Brigham Young pick'em against Florida. I mean, that's about 1.5 point deviation from what I've got. So all they're telling you is it's not that crazy to think Florida and Brigham Young are very comparable in terms of profile right now. All I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to help you understand having Brigham Young number 30 in a power rating means nothing about how I feel about the team. I'd have them probably ranked top 20 right now if I were ranking them. If I was a playoff committee member, well, obviously they're tied for first in the Big 12. So they don't need my endorsement. All they need to do is keep winning, and they would get themselves a first-round bye if they go on and win the conference championship. So all I'm trying to do is explain the methodology there. And I think if I know our audience like I think I do, this will bring a wave of questions when the JP poll comes out next week about where I have teams placed and what does FanDuel think about this. And then we'll probably be back this time next week doing this.